Welcome to the Early Night Show with Anway Pramanik.
Well, hello then to another episode of Anway Pramanik's Early Night Show with your host on the other side of this podcast, Anway Pramanik. It's a cool night. I would say it's the perfect night for lighting up a joint before sleeping. Excuse that. If you like playing video games, if you like binge watching TV shows, then I think you'll enjoy this podcast tonight, this evening. It's going to be divided into two. One podcast itself, but I'm going to divide what I'm going to say into two parts. And at the end of it, you might even make a comment like, man, this guy sounds a lot like a school teacher. Sounds like a nagging school teacher. Maybe I do. See, that's the problem, like when you enforce something down a student's throat, they're most likely not going to internalize it as well, as opposed to creating a situation where, as they're trying to figure out their solution, they're like, wow, I need to do that. Instead of making discipline something you shove down someone's throat, you put people in a situation where they're like, hey, I wish I had a little discipline or some process to inculcate some discipline. So that basically what I'm trying to say is you help people internalize it as opposed to shoving it down their throat. So I'm going to try my best to do that in this podcast, is as opposed to shoving something down your throat, a topic. I'm going to try and create scenarios where you are like, maybe I need to do this. So I'm going to talk about two things in this podcast. The first one's about making a plan. And the second one is about, or rather the first one is about how you go about doing things by making a plan. And the second one is about how you go about doing things, or how you go about revising what you've done so that you stay on top of the things that you've done. Right? It's at the back of your head. If I have to give you a very simple example, speaking, we were just talking about schools a while back, right? So you remember back in school, they would make us learn a chapter, and then they would make us revise that chapter, right? Revision. And it's because of that revision that we did, that at the end of the day we ended up learning it that much better, or mugging it that much better, correct? I'm against mugging, mugging up things, but I believe that revision is absolutely necessary for people, for us to know, or us to stay on top of the amount of vast information that we are collecting at any given point of time. Whether it's vast or whether it's limited information, we need to be able to stay on top of what we have learned. It's almost like, I remember reading this somewhere in an army journal, in a US Army journal, or maybe somewhere, that said that after you're done reading something or learning a concept, you revise it by writing it down and then saying it out loud while as and when you're writing it down. And I think that they don't try to do that because they want to scold or discipline any of the army soldiers. I think they do it simply because they want those soldiers to create situations where these soldiers internalize that I need to do this. Right? I mean, if you're a soldier who is not able to pick up, not able to internalize, I think you will get booted from the army immediately, right? So I was just having this this thought ki, like, in today's day and age, there's barely any time that we actually revise the things that we do in our day-to-day, the kind of content that we consume in our day-to-day. We barely ever have to revise once we're out of school or college, right? And unless we have learned to internalize in our school or college that revision is absolutely necessary, we don't ever revise or ever have to revise in the rest of our lives. So I very strongly believe that whatever it is that we consume on a day-to-day basis, whatever it is that we do on a day-to-day basis, we need to step back at the end of the day and revise those things. If it's something that we are learning, we need to revise on those things. At least, again, I'm not going to make it so much so about what you need to do, but I'll give you examples from my life. Whether it's me learning something for my marketing work, for my pitch work, for my client work, for my advertising work, right? If I'm learning something through the day, I usually, towards the end of the day, try to use those learnings in a practical situation so that my revision happens. Like, for example, if I'm learning about the 4 steps of a customer's journey, right, starting with awareness, consideration, see, I should have revised this better. There were 4 steps in the process, which is awareness, something, consideration, something, and then loyalty. So the moment I learned this concept, I actually went about and doing a pitch or creating a pitch PPT using this concept for that client. Right? And I'm pretty sure if I had not done that, then even the other 3 things which I'm able to remember out of the 4 right now, I would not be able to remember. I'm 100% sure of it. Now that's work and study related. I'm watching Berserk, the 97 anime right now, and I'm watching Vikings season 1 rerun again. At the end of 2 or 3 episodes, which, like, maybe if I'm watching 1 episode a day of each, at the end of 2 or 3 episodes, that is at the end of 3 days, I like to revise what has happened to Ragnar Lothbrok in the last 3 episodes. What has happened to Guts and Griffith's relationship in the last 3-4 episodes? Usually 2-3 episodes. what is it that has happened? What are the different changes? How is the show evolving? How are the characters evolving? How is the story changing? How is the narrative changing? I like to revise on these things. And I realized that when I started revising my shows versus just randomly, mindlessly binging them, I remember them better and there's a sort of deeper connect with the show that happens. I think I've made my third vlog was about, my third podcast was about overdosing on content. So if you like, you can take a look at it after this. Anyways, so this revision thing is actually the second part of this podcast, but I started with it, so let me just go with it. I think that no matter what it is that we do, we should revise it. And there's something that I want to start doing is, I've realized that just today, right? I was just yesterday or day before yesterday, I was on a call with my laptop's service technicians, and they were asking me, when did you get the warranty on your laptop, or when did you purchase your laptop? And for the love of me, I'm not able to remember if it was in January this year or January last year. Honestly, I'm not even able to remember what I was doing around January of this year and January of last year. So that's when I realized, there's some problem here, like I'm not able to remember my own life. There's no revision happening for the day-to-day things that I'm doing, the way I'm evolving as a person. There's no revision happening. I was kind of getting scary to that. It really struck with me, and I decided, I want to start journaling my days. I want to start writing about everything that's happened to me in a day, not just this podcast, but what happened to me in a day. How am I progressing? One of my mom's brothers, he had this habit. I remember even as a child, he would, just before going to sleep, journal his day. Even James Clear, someone I really look up to, the author of Atomic Habits, he too is a big advocate of revising your year. So he does a yearly review. Every year, I think since 2015, he's been doing it. And this is something I'm doing with my motorsports as well. I'm like, I revise the F1 races that I watch as I'm watching them, like I've been watching since 2017. And I would say I have not been as close to the technical side of F1 in terms of the team's growth and the progress of the teams as I have been this year, simply because I revise at the end of each race. So I'm much more clear on the fact that Renault has more low downforce speed than McLaren, or they showed in Spa, but at the same time in Monza, McLaren ended up having better pace, which is a less downforce track. So how does that happen? At the same time, you realize that Mercedes may have built their car to stay in front as opposed to follow other cars. At the same time, you realize that Ferrari is progressively getting slower. And you realize that a team like Haas is just stuck where they are. George Russell, I think, has flatlined in his quali pace now. Things like that, I'm much more close. I wouldn't be able to give such in-depth revisions of the last few seasons just because I revised this year. So that's how helpful it has been for me, and that's how much I think I'm going to take this revision even more in depth in my life, and I really look forward to seeing what it does for me. Now the part one is doing things with a fixed goal in mind or a vision or like an end game in mind. Like, I'll give you an example. I've only this year and just beginning of last year, it so happened that I've started buying real games on Steam, the official versions of the game as opposed to pirated games. Simply because of the ease and the kind of, it's very easy, it's hassle free. Softwares are less corrupted, your PC hangs less. Anytime in the future, I can install these games on any computer that I'm playing for free because I've already bought them once. One game that I bought in the beginning of this, sometime this year, was SKYRIM. And I fucking love that game. I've done maybe 5 playthroughs, but this is the 5th playthrough. And before this, all the 4 playthroughs, I played on a crack version. So after reaching significant portions of the game would crash for me and I would lose my save files. So one of the furthest I'd been was, the first time you look through the time break at the top of the throat of the world and you fight the black-winged bringer of the world's end. And you send him back, and that's when the game had crashed for me. And just today, I probably reached another significant milestone after that in the main storyline of the game. And that's simply because I think 3 or 4 days back, or maybe a week back, when I re-downloaded SKYRIM, and I'm like, I'm going to actually give you a little bit more context. So I downloaded SKYRIM, and I told myself I want to do 2 things. One is I want to become the leader of the Thieves Guild and get the Nightingale armor. And the second thing is that I want to play the companion storyline, because I had not done these 2 in either of my playthroughs. This time, I think I played for 50 odd hours, reached level 30. And I was the head Nightingale. I'd finished the Thief Guild missions and finished the companion missions. It's because I had a very fixed goal in mind. I want to do these 2 things. Now, once I've finished these 2 goals, what I realized is I'd played, I think, another 8 or 9 hours after that, and I realized I was just mindlessly wasting my time in the game. So immediately what I did is, I think I've done another podcast on this where I like to make myself uncomfortable to grow. Right? Like today I thought I'd make myself uncomfortable by fasting at night, but I couldn't. I just ate a heavy meal. I should have been a little uncomfortable. Maybe I'll fast tomorrow. Make a note of that in the sticky note. Fast. Okay. So to make myself uncomfortable, I immediately uninstalled the game. Now, yeah, because I bought the original version, now I can download it at any point of time and continue from the save game without the hassle of trying to find the files online, blah, 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 blah. So I recently downloaded it, and that's when I told myself, you know what I'm going to do this time? I'm not going to roam around and just mindlessly do shit. I'm going to finish the game, the main storyline of the game at least. Keeping that fixed goal in mind, I think today what I was able to do was, like I said, today I reached that significant, for those of you who have played SKYRIM, I'm literally about to reach where Alduin goes to feast on souls. I'm going to go there now. And I really look forward to it because I've read a lot about this part of the game, and in a lot of Nordic shows and cultures, and I'm very inspired by that Nordic culture. So the concept of Valhalla, afterlife, and a lot of the main heroes that you keep hearing about tales through the game, right? Like imagine if you've played Game of Thrones, if you watch Game of Thrones, you keep hearing about Rhaegar, and you keep hearing about um, the first Aegon, and you keep hearing about, I don't know, like Balerion the Dread. So imagine if you got to meet them, right? Or your favorite character got to meet them. So similarly, you get to meet some of the legends, like some of the people whose names are considered as gods, or they're not god, but they're considered as champions of the race of men. So I'm really looking forward to that, and that's one of the reasons why now I really want to play Skyrim. And it's not just a place where I go on a weekend to lose myself. I mean, that's obviously why I go to Skyrim, to lose myself, but it's not just a place where I go to lose myself and think I'm wasting time, which it's easy to start wasting time and stop enjoying it, because when I start wasting time in the game, I don't enjoy it. It becomes like, I'm like, what did I just do right now? So I've learned to stop beating myself over it and limit the amount of hours that I play. And now I've realized that if I put a plan, it becomes that much more easier. And this plan isn't just something that you do with video games, but if you're going on a holiday, you tell yourself, I'm planning to eat all the desserts that you can in that local area, all the different kinds of desserts. Or your plan is, I will save money in this trip. If you're planning to if you want to get a job, then your plan could be something like, I want to reach so and so salary, or I want to be in a company where there's more women for me to hang out with. No matter how big or how trivial a task, it should be done with some sort of an end game in mind. Most often we do it mindlessly, but I think when I started doing it very more mindfully, it's become that much easier and better. And which is why yesterday also, I think I made a podcast about the whole end goal that I have with the early night show with Anway Pramanik, or Anway Pramanik's early night shows. Yeah, I still haven't figured out which one to go ahead with. And even with Skyrim, when I revise what I've done in the game that day, I tend to enjoy it that much better when I'm playing it next, because I'm like, oh, this is that Elisif, the wife of the king. Oh, that's that lady who I stole that vial from in that mission. Oh, that's the lady who told me to find out if her daughter is alive or dead. And now she's giving me discounted merchandise because I helped her find out. Or I returned her daughter's last rites to her, or whatever. Oh, this is where I found that sword, or this is where I did that. So it becomes that much better. So now I want to start not just revising. So here's how it is, right? So you have making a plan and revising. Now you can do it. So imagine if it's so you have these two things you can do, and you can either do it for real life, or you can do it for your life, or for the content. You can do this for the output that you're going to generate in your life, or for the input that you're going to consume in your life. So far, I have been making a plan for all the output I've been generating in my life, like my work, my goals, my ambitions, my projects. I've always had a plan, an end game for that. But I've never had an end game for the content I'm consuming, which is what I've learned with Skyrim. And at the same time, I have always done a revision of content that I'm consuming, like Skyrim, MotoGP, Motorsport. I've always done that at some level. Now it's more finite. But I've never done revision for real life. The outputs that I'm doing, I've never done a revision for that. So input and output input being the things that I consume and output being the things that I do. And then you have revision and planning. So far, my output has had planning but no revision, and my input has had revision but no planning. And I think I want both of them to have planning and revision now. That sounds really fancy when I say it like that, you know? It's a good podcast, I think. Good concept I cracked, I think. So if you're listening to this, maybe you might make something out of this. I don't know. I know I made something out of it tonight. I'm going to light up the joint again. So, if this podcast, if this episode, if what I've been talking about got you thinking even a little bit, and if you're like, maybe I want to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, then I consider my work done for the night. And tomorrow, like immediately after this, I'm gonna watch an episode of Vikings. Because before this, I watched an episode of Vikings, then I revised that, and I'm gonna watch an episode of Vikings again. The plan to watch it is to understand what the hell is to understand how Ragnar Lothbrok conducts himself as an individual, as a leader, by doing certain things that sets him apart. How he deals with repercussions and how he deals with others straying away from what he'd expect of them. Like we always get very annoyed when people don't do what we expect of them. But Ragnar does the exact opposite. He doesn't even care. He deals with the repercussions, and I want to really learn that. So that's my plan. Like, how does he do that? And then tomorrow I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna revise. I'm gonna make a note of that. Revise. I'm gonna revise Berserk, where I'm at right now. SKYRIM, where I'm at right now. F1, where we are at before we go into the season. Into Mugello this weekend. Vikings, I'm gonna revise, even though I have revised it a little better. One more thing is revise my क्या बोलते हैं उसको journals. Journaling. Done. I've made the note. I don't know if you can hear me scribble. Yeah. So, I like how these episodes are getting very intimate. But at the same time, I'm not making it soppy and emotional, like ranting all the time. I'm enjoying it for sure. I hope you are as well. And I hope you can hear that. And I really hope that these podcasts become. Oh, the green tea is making me burp like crazy. And these podcasts become a place where you can truly find someone who does not bullshit you, bullshit themselves, bullshit. There's no, there's no bullshit. Like all of these things that I said today, I had a choice. At around 6:30, between 7 and 6:30 and 7:30 is when I think of what my podcast is going to be for the day. I was thinking, I'll talk about some gyan, something, and then it struck me, one thing that I've really learned, or I really learned today, is that I was really able to enjoy Skyrim because I had a plan. And I've been revising all these things that I've been doing these days, which is what's making it so much more enjoyable for me. So, coming back to you, I hope you're having a good night. It's 11 in the night right now. I hope you're readying up for the weekend. I hope you've like relaxed a little bit. Rest, put your back behind a little bit. Taken a back seat, feet off the pedal. One of those things that I would love it if you did for me is if you could, the next time you're having a delicious meal at home, just invite me over for lunch. No, I'm serious though. Definitely, definitely, please do invite me for a delicious meal. I hope you've had a delicious meal tonight. I hope you're not hungry. I hope you're, it's like I said, it's good to make it a little difficult, uncomfortable for yourself, but I hope you've had a delicious meal. And I'm going through this lady called Elna's Nurusi's Instagram, and she is stunning. She looks amazing. That's why I was getting a little distracted even in the beginning and right now. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm wishing you and Elna's a good night. Think of me. Think of a delicious meal. Think of me when you think of the delicious meal. Think of me when you eat that delicious meal, and I'll see you soon. Good night.